Today, I am very excited to be joined by two special guests, Justin Honaman and Tim Mitrovich. Justin leads the worldwide retail, restaurants, and consumer goods industry strategy and business development team at AWS. His team's focus within retail and consumer goods is on helping global customers to understand, navigate, and leverage Amazon's supply chain, advertising, e-commerce, physical store, artificial intelligence, digital core, and customer experience capabilities. Justin has spent the majority of his career within consumer goods and retail, both on the customer side with Coca-Cola and Georgia-Pacific, as well as the technology consulting side with Accenture and E&Y. We were also joined today by my incredible CEO, Tim, who has his own interesting background, where he built product for Bloomberg, he's an airplane pilot, and today he fearlessly leads Artisan Studios as we serve our own retail and CPG customers. I loved the conversation between these two, where each was able to share how they're helping retailers to modernize their supply chain to stay competitive in the industry. We also talked a lot about computing at the edge, of course, everyone's favorite topic, generative and agentic AI. I hope you enjoyed this incredible conversation with these two amazing leaders as I partnered with them to launch the next season of the Rebekah Panepinto project. Well, Tim and Justin, I am so excited to have you guys on the show today. Thank you for making the time and really excited to cover all the exciting things we're going to chat about today.
Yeah, I'm glad to be
thanks
here.
for having us.
The invite. Been counting down to this. It's awesome. I'm looking
Certainly the highlight of my Thursday afternoon.
Yep.
That was my goal. Love it. Well, let's start, Justin, with you and your amazing experience from the actual retail industry, working with Coke and a bunch of other different groups. But your perspective now from an AWS lens. How are you guys going about helping different retailers to really modernize and just basically keep up with digital innovation when it comes to their supply chain?
Yeah, so thanks for the invite again. For those that work in retail or around the retail industry, just so you know, retail and consumer goods and restaurants and food service is now kind of one vertical here at AWS. And so you mentioned a couple of the customers, and we'll talk about more of those today. But it's interesting in retail right now. You've got a lot of interest in stores, right, and growth and experience in stores. And moving to new tech in stores. And then also you have the e-commerce side of things, where obviously significant focus for not only the retailers that have stores and e-commerce, but also the digital pure plays that are growing in that space. So a lot of interest in accelerating the tech agenda. And the reason is AI. And in order to take advantage of that, you've got to have your data in a place that's accessible, and you've got to be able to test and learn. And so in order to do that, you've got to find ways to have more flexible tech, and not to dive into the details of it, but that's what's really been accelerating the I'd say the pursuit of that in retail the last 16 to 18 months.
And are you seeing the industry receiving AI opportunities with open arms, or is there still some hesitation?
Well, so, I mean, let's remember AI has been around since the 50s, right? So most of you all that are listening here or watching have already experienced it. And if you've shopped on Amazon.com and you've seen a recommendation or other people have bought like items, that is kind of base artificial intelligence or machine learning as part of that, right? And there's many great examples at Amazon in our fulfillment centers, Alexa, our Amazon Go stores and whatnot. So AI is not new. I'd say the last 2 or 3 years, what's been top of mind for most is generative AI and what value that is adding to the business or helping around cost savings or growth. And actually, it's brought the conversation, the AI conversation, out of IT and into the business world for most of our customers. And that's been a lot of fun because no longer is when someone says AI, they don't go, oh, that's IT's job down the hall. I mean, it's line of business value now. And so the answer to your question is I could probably map for you where most organizations are on a scale of early adopters versus kind of late to the game. Most are in the middle or to the front and really leaning in on this.
How about when it comes to supply chain? Where have you seen it drive the most return on investment for these retailers?
Yeah. So traditional AI you might find in forecasting, planning, some of the route planning, delivery. allocation in the retail space, allocation and merchandising. You find traditional cases where companies have been using some element of machine learning or AI already, or using data to help drive those decisions. Um, from a generative AI perspective, the models sometimes struggle to go get multiple data elements, bring them together, make sense of them, and then recommend a decision. And so I think we're still early days in seeing how some of that plays out. But traditional use cases around AI are already prevalent, and for us for sure across the Amazon supply chain, and for many of our customers, they're already leveraging that in their operations.
What do you think the average retailer kind of feels around the data? I mean, supply chain retail is always historically it's an arms race, to find the information, have the information, act on the information before your competitors, et cetera. And now with this big push on generative AI, there must be a big push around data strategy and trying to centralize. And where do you think people are?
So it depends. And so I was with a number of retailers this week, and we had this conversation, and they brought it up. They said, if you're a major retailer, significant size retailer, maybe 1,000 stores or a couple thousand stores, you probably have a pretty large group that's focused on data and reporting, dashboarding, scorecarding, and most likely can lean in on the AI front and be testing and learning and whatnot. But if you're a smaller retailer, you don't have that large group of analysts and of tech people that know how to manage the data and do data governance, and let alone lean in on AI. So we always assume that, why wouldn't you just jump in? But a lot of retailers struggle with the lack of either the data cleanliness, data integration, kind of the data availability, the people that know and can be like testing some of these models and leveraging that, and then the leadership alignment to say, hey, this is a priority, we're going to go do this. So it just depends, I think, largely on the size of the retailer. That's where we see some differentiation.
Yeah. But don't you feel like it kind of stretches the landscape a little bit,
It does.
right? If you're big enough and you've got the resources, you can go faster than somebody that doesn't. And it just kind of takes the industry does that.
Is the digital pure plays or the e-commerce pure plays.
Right.
Like, I'll give you an example, like Mercado Libre. They're the largest e-commerce platform in Latin America. They are a significant customer of ours. They actually compete against Amazon. They're a competitor against Amazon. They run their business largely on AWS. But because they're a digital pure play, they're able to move faster in terms of their ability to test and learn, try out new personalization or search capabilities, or leverage AI in unique and different ways, and they're already kind of set up for that, right? And so you see that in that kind of that market space versus a legacy retailer that struggled. They launched e-commerce separate from physical stores and struggling with the data piece of that before they could sort of
Sure.
I'd say thinking on the AI front.
Well, and that's a cool thing I've seen even personally being in the retail CPG space for a minute now, is that the people that used to be scared of Amazon because Amazon sells everything and they're like, oh, if they find out too much, they're going to compete with us, have totally changed their tune. And now they're realizing like, oh, we can take this and use it ourselves and be 10x better. Have you seen that happen pretty rapidly in the last couple of years as well?
Absolutely. And I'll give you a couple of examples of that. When I arrived at Amazon about 5 years ago, I would occasionally hear we're not sure we could work with you because Amazon's a competitor, or, Amazon can get to my data, or, fill in the blank other response. And you have to separate retail from consumer goods in this space, and I'll explain why in a moment. Fast forward to literally not just today, like 2 or 3 years ago, we really stopped hearing that from the vast majority of customers. The vast majority of retailers and consumer goods brands run either all or part of their business on AWS, period. They just may not be public about it. In the retail side, where we occasionally see the pushback is from grocery, because Amazon owns Whole Foods, we've got our own Amazon Fresh stores and whatnot. But even there, I can give you a list of the worldwide grocers that run their business on AWS, which completely separate business. On the consumer goods side of things, and especially right now, it is a significant growth area for us. And we very rarely hear any sort of compete, I'll call it Amazon compete questions. And that's now being covered by the analysts that are hearing that from our customers, by the press that are hearing that from our customers. How could you not want to leverage the tech, the innovation, the the retail thought leadership from one of the leading retailers in the world that's available to you, right? I mean, so I think that that's been exciting to see.
Yeah, for sure.
And you guys, this isn't, it's not like I set up the question for this, but if you ask many of our customers, they would share that with you. And I think that's been one of the big things I've seen shift over the last couple of years since I've been here.
Yeah, we've certainly been hearing that. It certainly tracks for sure.
To the point where it's so rare now that when I get on a first call, we have many customers that we don't work with today because they're just starting their journey into digital and cloud and whatnot. And if that does come up, I almost wonder, like, are we talking to the right person, or maybe there's been a miss in an understanding of how and what we offer, because it just doesn't come up.
Well, selfishly, I would love if Walgreens and every other grocer had the palm reading payment scan myself. So yeah, like, come on.
Okay, so let me explain for those that don't know this, and many people may not know what this is, but if you've been in a Whole Foods, you've probably seen it, or here in New York, for example, at Amazon Go stores, you can actually authenticate into the store or pay with your palm. Essentially, you're associating a credit card to your very unique palm. And by the way, that's an AI use case. For payment. And imagine, anywhere there's an Amazon One unit, you can use your palm to pay. It's super cool. So yes.
Yeah, I was in Whole Foods Bryant Park literally this weekend, and for some reason it was down. And I was laughing at myself as I'm inconvenienced that I have to pull my credit card out at Whole Foods. And I'm like, wow, first world problem. I have gotten way too used to this.
It's cool innovation.
But it's usually up and running. So I love that technology. Well, Tim, I want to chat a little bit about our experience firsthand with a pretty large retailer in Chick-fil-A. And the experience there, obviously, they have big teams. They do have a lot of people. But when we first met them, they were struggling with that vision and where they take things next. And really, we're looking to a partner to help guide that. So talk us a little bit through that first initial introduction to them and what that real process looked like to get them to the point that they are with us today.
Sure. So I don't know that I would say that they struggled with vision. I think they had a vision, and they're very intentional. It's an incredible company. I think they were kind of operating a startup within a company. So let me kind of expand on that. For anyone that's listening today, you've probably seen the lines around the corner at a Chick-fil-A in name your city. It's a phenomena. It happens. And those restaurants aren't super large, right? So it kind of got to the point where they could only hold like pretty much a day of inventory in the back of the house. And so someone at some level in leadership realized that supply chain is kind of the constraining factor in growth, right? Like, you just can't grow any more unless you can figure out some way to increase the flow of goods through the restaurant, right? Coming in from your suppliers and getting out to customers. And so, they created Chick-fil-A Supply and bought trucks and built warehouses, hired drivers, and started down this journey to become a distribution company. It was no longer good enough to just be a restaurant. So, but in typical traditional kind of Chick-fil-A style, they take the customer experience very, very seriously. And so, their restaurant operators, they treat them like customers, and they really want to understand what pushes the needle, what drives you, what's your pain, et cetera. And, a lot of it came down to just not having faith in how the product is getting delivered in the back of the restaurant. So, we got involved to help with that. And it was a really fun journey. I think one of the things that Artisan does that's probably different than others is that we really walk a mile in a customer's shoes. Right. And so when we started that project, every single person on the team went and worked in a Chick-fil-A. We all worked the breakfast rush, learned how to make hash browns, learned how to make chicken sandwiches. And then we went out on deliveries overnight, because they do, doing deliveries at 2:00 in the morning, pushing 700-pound pallets around, trying to figure out what's the pain, how do we solve it, and how do we kind of bring digital into this very physical process and improve the experience for everyone. Right. And it really moved the needle.
Yeah, I'll add on to that. So Chick-fil-A, I live in Atlanta, by the way, where their headquarters is. I know
Sure.
a lot of their leadership. Incredible brand. And a great customer of ours, by the way. What I think is, in building on what you're saying, is so interesting is they think of the customer first and work backwards from that
Mhm.
experience. And the customer might be the three of us here. And also the customer could be businesses, the customer could be, think catering, the customer could be, and even beyond that, they think of their staff member. How do they engage their employees for retention, for experience working at a location?
Well, and each one of those employees is a customer. Each one of those employees goes to a restaurant and buys a sandwich too, right?
Totally. And you think, and then even their partners. And so
Yeah.
you work back from that, and if they identify an opportunity or a need, then they're all about it. But they start with that customer experience, and then it gives you kind of the what you're trying to achieve and the metrics around that, and then the payoff in terms of the overall experience. So I think that's something they do really well.
Yeah, they do a fantastic job, and I think that's why they continue to stay out in front, and not just from a supply chain perspective, but just across the board. I mean, they really put their customers first, whether it's a staff person or a restaurant operator or a team member or a customer walking in the door to buy a sandwich. They put those folks first and worry about everything else second. And by doing that, they build a really, really solid business.
Yeah, I'll take another angle on this for those that are listening that might be in a business where you're in consulting or technology and you're serving customers. Um, the point you made around visiting and spending time in the store is significant. We were
Hmm.
going to visit a retailer 2 weeks ago that has a couple thousand stores. And before, in the planning, I asked the entire team, I was like, what store are you going to visit, and what stores are you going to visit before we go meet the customer? Um, it's an earned trust. That's one of our leadership principles. It's an earned trust
Absolutely.
element of
Yeah.
imagine sitting down with anyone and they say, well, which is your favorite store? And like, I haven't been in one. Game over. Meeting is over. But
Exactly.
when you go visit the store and you talk to the employees, they'll tell you about the experience or where their struggles are, and then you walk in with some information. So I just, it's so simple, and I'm surprised at times that groups don't make that small effort, but that's so key before you walk in to meet with any
Well,
customer.
yeah, it's key for so many reasons. I mean, it's good to earn the trust, but it's also just makes smart business sense, right? Instead of trying to boil the ocean, and this is what one area where I think we align very well with Amazon is you have a vision, and that vision can be really big, but you work it all the way back to a starting point. You start small, and you spend as little time as possible assuming what you know about customers. You just get something small out there and then let your customers drive the innovation from there. And if you do that, then you've optimized your spend. Like whatever it costs you to get from point A to point B, you couldn't have spent any less to get there than doing it like that. It's incredible.
Like, yep, agree.
So with both Artisan and AWS, we're all great at the working backwards, spending a lot of time up front, making sure there's a good roadmap and plan and, actually people in the field touching and feeling the experience. But in the case of Chick-fil-A, for example, we've been there 7 years now, and this product has evolved. So what is the advice you would give to customers that are making a significant investment early on into their supply chain in making sure that over time they continue to innovate and evolve as appropriate for the business needs as they scale and as things change, like on a daily basis?
Yeah, I mean, I think the first and foremost is about customer feedback. Make sure that that's driving where you're trying to go, and then you really need to kind of focus on the data. And one thing I think that Chick-fil-A did great is from the very beginning they were curious about the data, intentional about the data, and that makes things investments that you want to make in years 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7 so much easier if you think about that from the beginning, right? So making sure that you're tracking everything, making sure that you have a kind of a foundational data strategy and that's in place. The sooner you do that, the sooner that will pay dividends, and over time that pays massive dividends. So data, customer experience, in my opinion, are the two.
Yeah, I were to say, thinking of supply chain only, Chick-fil-A is in growth mode, so we're ready. we're where they want to be, location wise. We can help with global scale. We, as they're opening new stores, adding new capabilities, more than ready. On the second front, resiliency is so key right now in supply chain, with all kinds of factors playing in, right? Whether it be sourcing and procurement or, financial, right, implications. Like, you look at what the last couple of weeks before we're recording this, just all the noise around tariffs and like implications
Mm-hmm.
to consumer spending abilities and whatnot. So, but from a supply chain perspective, for us, it's we. If you think about how AWS and Amazon operate, 80% of what we do and build or capabilities are built on what customers have shared with us they need. 20% is us looking around corners, thinking ahead for what they might need. And so, and then supply chain space is one that we're absolutely looking ahead at what customers could or potentially could leverage or need. And that's significant, whether it be a Chick-fil-A or any other of our customers.
Yeah, for sure. Resilience is a big deal. I'd also throw in like operational resiliency too. I mean, there are situations that can take a warehouse down. And if that happens, what do you do? How do you respond? How do you kind of, what's your backup plan? And I think I was kind of surprised to find that oftentimes there isn't a backup plan. And so, you put some thought into that and think about tech and how can you take those orders and move them around to kind of stay online when things in the back of your house are offline, because ultimately the customer doesn't care, right? They want what they want when they want it, and it's incumbent on you to make sure that they can get it.
Now, Justin, thinking of your even wider purview of retail CPG, what's another complete innovation digital journey that you've seen happen in the last 3-4 years that was really mind-blowing, that couldn't have really been done without the AWS backbone?
So I'll tell you another area that's top of mind right now, and it does link in a bit to this, but let's put supply chain on the side. In the digital commerce space, things like search and personalization, and then therefore loyalty. And and anybody that's been around these industries for a while would say, well, those aren't new topics. And I agree. In fact, they've been around for quite a while, but what is different is the tech enabling it and the data availability and just the tools that are out there now to help. I mean, like if you look at image search, for example, on Amazon, I mean,
Mm-hmm.
the ability to, within 2 or 3 seconds, if I took a photo of the beverage I'm drinking over here, I mean, it's going to pull it up, and like that capability, like anybody could have that on their site today, right? But
Mm-hmm.
they don't. They're still trying to get there. The ability to personalize an experience, not new, but if I've got better information and understanding of you and like customers, and I can be serving up in new and different ways. There's better CRM tools. And then loyalty, I would ask this like every week right now. Is there anything new we're seeing around loyalty and points or programs or and I felt like it's kind of an old topic and had gone away, but it has been front and center. Again, I think our customers are thinking about the customer experience and the customer journey, and building basket and delivering a better experience, knowing them to serve them. And so that's an area on the digital commerce side I've seen an explosion of interest from our team. I think supply chain is a huge bucket, and you could go all across the supply chain elements to talk about that. But if I had to pick one other, this would be it.
Well, and I hate to pull the millennial card, but I think about the experience, like my generation and up and comers with Amazon and the personalization, the customer experience, that it's on your doorstep the next day. If somebody else that I buy from can't even get close to that expectation, I move on really fast and I'm
Yeah.
frustrated. So
Yeah.
the reality is other groups have to pull in pieces of these elements in order to adhere to the expectations of the up and coming purchasers and the generation that's going to be, their long-term customer.
It's that arms race. It really is. And as there's more data and more tech, it allows you to do things more quickly, which resets customer expectation, which forces everybody to catch up, and then the cycle repeats itself. And I think by the time my kids, I don't know, what are they, Gen Beta? By the time my kids are our age, I don't even know what it will be. It'll be outrageous how fast things move.
So why do retailers hesitate right now? Like when you're in those conversations,
Uh,
what's the roadblock?
I don't know that it's hesitation. There a couple of I'll say building blocks for those that are doing it well, are doing just digital well. Number one would be their leadership, their CEO, literally CEO and leadership team have decided that, you know what, technology is not only, that's not an office in the other building. Like it's going to be a big part of how we grow the business, how we engage with our customers. You know, if I'm a major brand, like for example, Kellogg's, a big customer of ours, you know, they've decided that technology is going to be a big part of how they interact with retailers, how they go to market, how they engage with the end consumer, right? Leadership has decided that. They then have decided certain leaders are going to own different parts of that plan, right? And they've
Exactly.
decided partners to help to work with them on that. Like it's the leadership, then the people that own it. There's a plan, there's metrics around it, and then you know, then you're leaning in versus you know, we'll get to that one day. It's not a priority now, or too hung up in the day-to-day operations. I can't think about that. And I think that that's where you're starting to see differentiation from, you know, from those that are leaning in and moving faster than others.
I guess I would add to that what I've seen is that I haven't seen anybody not interested. I've seen reluctance because they don't know necessarily how to attack it or where to start. Right. And that's where I think sometimes we're able to help because we've done it for a number of other folks. And so we can come in and kind of be that confidence, if you will, up front to help them dip their toe in the water and get started and then go. But oftentimes I see people looking around at the market landscape and watching things changing at the speed of light going, oh my gosh, I don't even know what to do or where to go and how to start. And so I think if you can get them started, then they can kind of get over that reluctance.
Now, Justin and Tim, you both are obviously very busy with a lot of day-to-day demands, but you also, I mean, Justin, you're at every show. Tim, you're on a plane every week. You guys still make all these rounds to make sure you're staying relevant on what's going on within retail and technology. So what are some areas that you look to for inspiration and for staying on top of where the future is going? And out of that, what is getting you excited about what's up next?
Okay, I'll start on that one. So, my team is a worldwide team. They all came out of the industry. They sit in different geographies and they align to the geography, but also the customers in that geography. And I tell them that they almost don't need to read analyst reports because they probably have better data on what's really happening in the market than anybody else that we could even read about. And I'm every day there with customers, and then when we meet every week, we share what we're seeing in different geographies, like not just for those customers, but what's happening in the market. So I learn more from our own team than most of the analyst reports that I could read. So that's one thing. Because of the way we're set up, I think it's really a unique proposition. Number two, if you want a good example of a research outlet to check out, if any of you are in retail, I would go check out CoreSight. Deb Weinswig and her team provide very close to real-time insights on the market, and not just US market. So, you know, we're a global company, our customers are global, they don't want to just hear about North America. So that would be a second thing. And then you mentioned shows. Okay, you can't go to all the shows, and you can't go there just, you know, as a boondoggle, whatever. I mean, you really have to go with a purposeful intent around that. So like what's great about some of the retail or consumer goods events is that at one place you can meet with multiple customers. A good example of that would be the FMI midwinter event. Okay, in 2.5 days, our broader Amazon team, we had more than 20 C-level meetings with 20, you know, top brands. Okay, all in one place. That would never happen, even over the course of a year, let alone in 2.5 days. So, yeah, are you kidding? Like that, like how could we miss that opportunity, right? Not only that, but then they get to hear where we're headed. And there's a level of trust that's built, and then out of that comes actions we can go and pursue and whatnot. So, you know, speaking at events, that's great. It's a good, you know, building awareness in the market of what we're doing in the industry, but really engaging with customers where they are is a big part of that.
We're kind of on this, I don't know what you call it, but I always think in terms of the Gartner hype cycle, right? Where you're on this kind of ride. And we're currently on this rocket ship around generative AI, and the tech is evolving at a crazy pace, but the adoption of the tech is also happening at a crazy pace. And seeing how that adoption applies inside of a retailer or applies inside of, a supply chain logistics company is incredible. But what I love, what gets me really excited is being able to be a conduit, because I see what's going on at these customers. When I go meet with another customer, like, well, let me tell you what I saw at the last 7 meetings. And they're like, oh my God. And now they are a month or two ahead of the analyst reports, which matters, right? So that's certainly what gets me really excited. Is not just the rise of this new technology, but the change in pace of adoption of technology that's happening because of this new technology. It's like rapid change happening on 2 dimensions when typically it happens on 1. So it's a bit of a rocket ship. You kind of have to hold on for dear life, but it sure is fun.
My last point on that for me would be, and I've said this for years, if you want to win in the industry, you've got to be engaged in the industry. You can't be coming to sell something. You can't be walking in with a contract. You can't be coming to get a deal done. Hey, can we get a meeting after this? It's got to, you have to be so passionate about retail, so passionate about restaurants or food service, or consumer goods, and what's next year? What's the next barcode what's the next version of labeling? What about sustainability? You've got to be invested and with your customers, and then let that lead to relationships. And if you want to win in the industry, you've got to be engaged in the industry, not come and try to sell something.
That's exactly right. Don't come with a contract, come with an idea. That's what I always tell everybody in our organization. Come with an idea. The contracts, everything else will sort itself out, but come with an idea.
Sounds a lot like the customer obsession leadership principle we know of.
Yeah, we've heard of that.
It's one of my favorites.
It's been great. So on a personal level, though, when it comes to your own leadership principles, I'm curious for each of you, what has been the guiding principle that you've lived by to be successful in business?
I'm going to jump in on that one. So, I hit my early 40s and I took a look around and because I had a little bit of a Jerry Maguire moment where I was like, I need a change. And I realized how important relationships are, and how much more important that was than just about anything else, like career growth, money. It didn't matter. It was about the relationships and the people that I spend my day with every day. I spend actually more waking time with everyone at Artisan than I do with my wife and kids. Just by definition, I'm with these folks for 9 hours a day every day. So I need to like them. Right. And I need to put that at the top of my priority list, above career, above money. The other thing that I think I realized is that, you have to put your customers first in a fundamental way. And everybody says it. It sounds cliche, but I mean it. Don't be afraid to give advice to your customer that might not be in your best interest. Just give the advice. Be there. Be that trusted advisor. Treat them as if they are gold. And if you do that, they'll treat you the same way. If you treat your employees like that, your employees will treat you like that. And if you do that for both your employees and your customers, you have a very successful business.
Yeah, I'll speak to just leadership ideas here. So if any of you lead a team or lead an organization, maybe these would be helpful, or things you've already thought about. But visibility, availability, kind of reliability. You're people reach out, there's a problem, you're owning it, you're following up. Doesn't matter what your level is. You're in the details.
Yeah.
And kind of I'd say flexibility, but I'll say maybe the better word is adaptability, because every organization that's out there is going to have change and flux. And I mean, Amazon, we're willing to change the org model next week if it means better serving a customer, or we have a principle or an idea, what's called one-way or two-way door thinking, where we can, if it's two-way door, we could try something and come back through it. One-way door or something, a big investment, and we're kind of in it. But just that requires the ability to be adaptable and flexible. And I just back to the kind of summing up, just from a people leadership perspective, I think again, availability and visibility to your team, to the organization. And for me, I over communicate, and I even tell my team, just so you know, I may not have all the detail here, but I'm at least informing you as far as where we are. Same thing with customers. I'd rather keep them in the loop. They appreciate it. there's a level of trust built, and also just knowing that, hey, we're working on something. So that's just a couple of ideas for you.
Well, Justin, Tim, you both are awesome. This has been so much fun. Thank you for sharing your wisdom and insight.
Absolutely.
And I'm excited to see more success between Artisan and AWS as time progresses.
Absolutely.
Well,
Thank you.
Been a lot of fun.